How did I get here? What do I do next? And so when you bring up a 3PL, it's really cost of labor and optimizing transactions, right? So which is what you think about as a technologist, right? I have a finite number of people, need to maximize throughput per person. So then it just becomes about organizing resources. What a lot of companies get into is as they grow, they throw people at something where they had some stuff, they had some grit, some kind of chutzpah, the founder really had something, and they fail to define, these are the principles on which we operate.
You're listening to Freight Famous, presented by Rose Rocket, bringing you the people that make trucking move. From behind the scenes into the limelight. Here's your host, Justin Bailie.
Hi everyone, welcome to Freight Famous, a podcast produced by Rose Rocket. New episodes of Freight Famous will be released about twice a month. On this podcast, we talk with guests about how they build, scale, and automate their trucking and transportation businesses. I'm your host, Justin Bailie. I'm also the co-founder at Rose Rocket. I'm excited to welcome my guest today, Michael Caney. Michael is a keen strategist and visionary leader with a demonstrated track record for driving transformational change that helps early-stage freight tech companies and mid-market 3PLs accelerate growth and achieve scalability. Michael has 20 years of experience in leadership and advisory roles in corporate development, sales, brokerage, managed services, technology, and fleet operations. He's also the founder of GrowthNexus, a consultancy firm that infuses experienced executives into go-to-market planning, sales playbooks, and operational process design to help companies simplify technology decisions. It's an innovative service he calls fractional executive leadership. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks, man. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So I think we'd be interested to hear your background. I think for full disclosure for the listeners, I've never met Michael before. The sort of 3 minutes we did a preamble before this started. So he came to me recommended from a friend and someone I trust, and they're like, you have to have this guy on the show. And honestly, I don't get a ton of that, so we try to jump on those when we can, and Michael was kind enough to give us his time. So I'm probably as curious and enthusiastic as our listeners for the show. So let me have it, man. How did you get into the freight industry?
Thanks, man. I wanted a sales job out of college. I was the guy that was like waiting to get out of college to work. Like I had friends that did like internships, and I was like, well, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. I actually grew up in the credit and collections business. So it was like, I understood sales in the third party world, and I got recruited to work for this little company in Dallas called Bear Transportation. And honestly, man, they just called me. Like they saw my resume in a college resume book, and that I had sales experience, and started explaining this business to me. And I was like, you don't just call them to like pick stuff up. Like you call the guy with the truck. And like, I had no idea, man. I had no idea. And that was it. I needed a sales job. I was engaged, getting married, and I needed a sales job. And they hired me. It's really that sexy, man.
Yeah. No, it's fair. The truth isn't always, the stories, you can kind of make them sound cooler, but I appreciate the straight line to that. So you start selling.
Yep.
What kind of gets you from there to here? Because now you kind of go through this, you've got 20 years experience, you're working with freight tech companies, you're working with 3PLs, you're working in leadership. Sounds like you've kind of worked throughout the different various channels of the industry. So, what maybe some kind of highlights and timelines around, what brings you here?
Yeah, for sure, man. So, like I said, I wanted a sales job, and at the heart of it, Justin, I've really always loved solving problems and people. And it's funny, when I was in high school, actually, I thought about going to Bible college, and then I realized that you don't get paid very much money to do that. So, but I always really enjoyed helping people. I had exposure to like personal development stuff. And like I said, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. And so, the transportation and brokerage just kind of became my widget, if you will. Like it just kind of was the thing I did to ultimately fulfill what I wanted to do, which was learn strategy, help people, train. Like I sold insurance in college. I did multi-level marketing. Like I'd always been doing something that just involved like people and strategy. And the reality is at Bear, I was pretty successful pretty quick, and then pretty bored pretty quick. And so I'm sure you sell to a lot of companies. I came up in that cradle to grave world. I literally had 2 phones on my desk, shipper, carrier, like doing the whole thing. The after hours number on the rate confirmation was my phone number. I was giving out comm checks in the middle of the night. Like that was my life for close to 10 years. I made enough money and my book was kind of running, that I would go find projects in the company to just do that bothered me, inefficiencies or areas of growth, or I would train. I didn't really get paid directly to do that, but my book of business was big enough. And that's just kind of how those businesses ran back then. And so I just was anxious to solve problems and do stuff. And they let me, they gave me enough rope to hang myself, so to speak. We had a big cradle to grave company, and a lot of those companies end up with dependencies on key customers or certain people. Turnover becomes very difficult. It was kind of like back in the early 2000s, everyone wanted to be TQL. That was the thing. Like, oh, they're $400 million back then. Just hire 100 people and go do that. And so I got an opportunity to try to fix some of those things, bring in technology, change the business model, which was right around when like Coyote splashed on the scene.
Yep.
And the branding and the videos and Jeff Silver talking on the internet about how fucking cool logistics is. And I'd never heard anything like that before. I was like, oh, I just thought we were these little people in Texas do. So that was kind of my thing, man. It kind of opened my eyes to like, oh, there's a bigger business out there than just this company that I do it for in Texas. And so that was kind of it. And I was just really curious. Just spent a lot of time being curious.
So I guess jumping right then into it. So you work with, and the friend who had introduced us, he's a CEO of I think what would be coined sort of a mid-market 3PL. And so, you know, when he mentioned you, you know, and I said this earlier in our show, you know, he's described himself, you know, he's a Midwestern guy. This is his description, not mine. And he sort of described his own personality as, you know, a guy just driving his pickup truck around town. He described you as the type that would drive his Porsche and smash it into a telephone pole and run from the cops. And not to suggest that you're doing anything illegal or nefarious, but I think in a sort of a way that I understand well, being in technology, there's a bit of a, and I think you kind of alluded to it, right? You said you got bored, and I think that's a common thing amongst entrepreneurs. And so, you know, when you think about the work that you do, so let's do this. So I'm a $30 million 3PL, and I'm looking for help in my business in terms of, I want to grow it. I want to grow profitability in the business, because my problem right now is for every $100,000 I add in gross margin, I'm adding $85,000 in new costs, and I can't get to that scalability moment. Yeah. How do you help me?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and that's almost what every single one of my clients.
I kind of picked that example because I know that to be sort of a true
that's exactly what
model.
It is. And so listen, I'm not the $1 billion brokerage guy. Okay, I'm not the boardroom like deep finance guy.
Yeah.
I like gritty founder-led companies. I like early stage tech companies trying to find product market fit, trying to understand the operating company they're selling to. But essentially, what you're asking is. So every single company I work with is either how do I start something or what's next. So my clients are like, I do this, I want to start this within the company. I do this way, I think we can also do this. Or, you know, one of the things that Liz sent me was like, what are the stages of scaling a business? And the way I think about it is, oh my God, how do I stay in business? Holy shit, how did
survival.
I get here? Shit, how did I get here? Yeah. And then some version of what do I do next? Over and over and over and over again. How did I get here? What do I do next? And so when you bring up a 3PL, it's really cost of labor and optimizing transactions, right? So which is what you think about as a technologist, right? I have a finite number of people. I need to maximize throughput per person. So then it just becomes about organizing resources. What a lot of companies get into is as they grow, they throw people at something where they had some stuff. They had some grit, some kind of chutzpah. The founder really had something, and they fail to define these are the principles on which we operate. We're all doing the same thing in the 3PL world. We're all picking up truckloads and taking them over here, picking up LTLs or doing last mile. But the how and how we choose to organize ourselves, and does everyone understand that and do we agree on it? Well, that's a different game, right? And so oftentimes people will get to 70, 80, 100, even $150 million on personality, on 6 or 7 agents, on 2 big rainmakers, right? And then they can't scale. Right, or they're running at 2.5%, 3% income because it's just not profitable. They're losing people, right? They had something really going until $60, $70 million, and they thought, well, we'll just hire 70 more people and the business will just double. And then when it doesn't, they call me like, I don't get it. Like, well, you're not actually telling people what you want them to do. You're not training them correctly. You don't have your system set up correctly. Your comp doesn't scale. You're paying dollar for dollar on every dollar that comes in. You invested $1 million on Rose Rocket and you didn't pay your people any different. You didn't require any additional production. Things like that. Like a company will go from some archaic load board with colors, with dispatched over here and loaded over here. It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. They'll go from that to a good piece of technology and require zero change in the goal or productivity from their people. So, well, why do you invest all that money, right? So it's really basic. It's really basic blocking and tackling, but it's how do you think about those problems?
So how do you then retract that? So you're there, now what?
Like in the technology scenario?
Well, no, just the business side of things. So it's like you can. So I guess it's you then put the the caveats in place, or you can sort of ratchet it back. Like, so we invested the $1 million in Rose Rocket, didn't ask for a productivity increase. Is it, or we? I think what you were saying, and maybe just correct me if I'm wrong, is that we lost. We started the business, and it was almost, you could say, founder led or key account led, and that's again you kind of see this play over and over again, and you get to a place where it doesn't scale because you just can't do the things you used to do, and maybe that's be in the room for every single interview, or you get complacent with the 71st hire versus the 11th hire, and all those things that start to happen. How do you undo that then?
Man, leadership. Honestly, it sounds trite, but it's really just leadership, and really just consist like boiling it down to the basics of what are we doing. Here's what I think is really interesting about businesses. They're all really. This is the same business. I talked to a friend of mine that's at a big publicly traded deal. He runs a $500 million brokerage. And we were joking because we started in the business at about the same time in different states as cradle grade brokers. And we were joking saying, isn't it funny how 20 years later, this business is still the same? It's relationships and optimizing your labor spend on your P&L. But that's it. Like that's how you that's how you take a $200 million in top line revenue and drop 5% of that in profit. It's optimizing labor, optimizing throughput, minimizing risk, right? But to answer your question, every business is very unique in that it has like an ethos, right? That founder, that's why I don't do big private equity exit deals because it loses it. But these founder-led businesses, family-led businesses, our friend, right, that took over from a founder and a family, they have a certain ethos about them, right? And if you can find that and you can harness it and you can put it on a piece of paper, like literally write it down and create some values and get everybody saying the same thing, it keeps us from going all over the place, right? That friend of ours, we were joking, like I joked with him recently. I said, so you finally quit playing with all your toys. Yeah. Because he was like, man, I'm just going to block and tackle and run my brokerage. I was like, yeah. Because every time I would talk to this guy, he'd have a new toy, right? He's certified in this and bought this technology and tried this out. I'm like, dude, like, you're moving 1,000 loads a month. Just be really good at moving 1,000 loads a month. You don't need all that stuff.
So funny, you and I. So we're having parallel conversations. He's going to listen to this for sure, and we're having parallel conversations with him. And it's the thing. Basically, the thing I'd said to him about that business, and it's exactly it. He likes different toys, and I think he struggles in brokerage in particular because it's almost, this is unfair, and actually this is kind of a theme that the conversation I had this morning. But it's like, it's almost too mundane, for lack of a better term. Like the execution of it, like it's hard in the weeds, but from a leadership perspective, I mean, you said it. It's find truck, find freight, move freight, deliver freight, get paid. I mean, it's sort of this, and I think that roteness, I think for him is almost like, and I think you see this in a lot of entrepreneurs in general when they start these businesses. They kind of start to work like that, and then they get distracted with other things. They want to build technology. They want to become kind of different companies almost because, I was the same. I had a brokerage and it led me to where I am today. But I was really one of those, I think, pretty cliche, owners where it was like, I'm going to build my own technology to do this thing. And that almost never works. And that basically didn't work for me. I kind of somersaulted and fell down into like a ditch that happened to be Rose Rock. Like it was a lucky fall, but it could have easily been a cliff, right? But I think like that it's a common theme. And I think it's just, I don't know if it's just you just get bored with the success or what it is, or not even the success per se, but the motion of it. I also think this is a little more philosophical, but I also feel like in brokerage, I know I went through this and I've talked to some others that have too, maybe not to the same degree, but I used to feel guilty. I used to feel guilty from sometimes making the money. Now it's not the same way because the margins have been kind of squeezed, but
Yeah.
I used to actually feel bad as a business owner. This is kind of crazy thinking about how, well, we make a phone call and cover a load really quick and you'd make $1,000 on that load. I used to feel shitty about that.
Yeah. I know. I get that, man.
And I feel bad. Yeah. And it was like, but I could lose money just as easily, and it would hurt less when I lost money than when I made that kind. So I guess in a sense, there's sort of this, I don't know where I'm even going with this, but there's kind of a founder curse, I guess, around.
Yeah.
I don't know, like when you're really, really customer centric, like you can almost get overly empathetic and lose sight of the value that you're bringing. Yeah. Which is kind of ironic in and of itself. But I found that happened to me, and I'm kind of almost witnessed that in varying degrees with other people too, and it manifests in different ways. Yeah. But
well, I think the other thing too is entrepreneurs that, look, man, if you're going to start and run a profitable brokerage, right, not go raise money and buy business, but like if you're going to start running a profitable brokerage, it's a grind.
Yeah.
Right. Like in that first $20-30 million, who does the claims? The founder, right? Or like his wife. Right? Who's training people? It's a grind, man.
Yeah.
Like everybody thinks like, oh, I'll just get 20 people and I'll make $20 million and I can make 3 or 4%. I'll have a little lifestyle business. No, right? Some dat rat takes your load and runs off with it and the customers call it, like, it's a grind, right? And so I meet a lot of guys. I mean, I've met 20 guys in their 50s that are just like, man, I'm just tired.
Yeah.
I'm just tired. Can you please help me? I've been keeping this together for, like, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. Like the first company I worked for, we were doing some changes, man. I was sitting at the bar with the president of the company. I'm in my 20s, in his mid 50s. And he's like, I really hope this works, man. I'm so tired. I don't want to do this anymore.
No pressure.
I'm going, man, I don't really, it's not really very inspirational. I really don't know you should be telling me that. But, and so I think that's a lot of it. Like as a technologist, I'm sure, Justin, a lot of your businesses probably boil down to the quality of the questions you ask, right? Like you're trying to contextualize a certain type of workflow or framework to the same business that runs 100 different ways, especially in the asset world, right? Like how do people organize things? As simple as brokerage can be or technology can be, there's a lot of different flavors of brokerage. And I see a lot of folks, they'll go to a FreightWaves conference or they'll go somewhere. They'll go to TIA and they start trying to figure out what everyone else is doing. And I really spend a lot of time just telling people they have a really great business.
Yeah.
Like you have a really great business, you have really good people. Let's double down on what you're very good at. That doesn't mean that we can't get cute and do some other stuff, but let's look at what you already do. Is there a managed service play? Because you already kind of do it. Because this guy's got $10 million in spend and you're really already managing 7 million of it. Almost ad hoc, like, well, you're kind of sort of managing it. Like, how would we codify that? How would we charge differently? Like, sometimes it's really just people that are running a profitable company without the benefit of these massive injections of capital really are in the business every day.
Yeah.
And sometimes all I do is I'm just the guy that provides a little bit of relief to take a breath and go, what do we do really well? And then oftentimes a business will have a lot of vision, right? A very visionary founder, right? Very visionary leader, like the kind of is always playing with something. And people struggle with the day-to-day, what do I do every day, right? Or a very good grinder, I can keep it in business, I know how to do this, I've done this 15 years, where's the vision? Mm-hmm. I can kind of tie those things together. And I can do that because I screwed it up really bad.
Right.
I remember I was working for a guy named Scott Pruneau, probably one of the best leaders I've worked for. He's the CEO of ITS Logistics in Reno. And I was always like all over the place. And I'd gone to work for Redwood because I just kind of wanted to learn some stuff. And I was supposed to be opening branches for him. And I was always tinkering. I was messing with data. And I was used to being a director of a big P&L. And now I'm jacking around opening offices. It wasn't the most fun in the world, but I loved the Redwood guys and I learned a ton from them. And I remember Scott just set me down one day and he's like, dude, you're all over the place. Nobody knows what the hell to do. Like these people will follow you anywhere, but nobody knows what the fuck you're doing. I was like, what do you mean? And he just gave me this very simple codified framework. You do these 3 things every day and don't do anything else. And I was like, well, that sounds really boring. I still use it today.
What are those three things?
So if you call me and I show up, I've just stolen Scott Pernod's stuff. So I probably owe Scott some money for that. So.
You should, yeah. Scott, if you're listening, there's a check. If it's not coming, it's due.
I sent him a sleeve of golf balls.
So what are these three things?
Yeah. So paint the picture, right? Did we win or lose? Do you know at a financial, so you go and you do right now people are doing quarterly planning. Okay. And people will do EOS, or they'll do scaling up, or they'll call Vistage or some asshat to come in and tell them how to set a goal. Fine. But every single day, does the logistics coordinator have any idea how the 40 loads that they're supposed to track tie to that quarterly, right? Did we win or lose, right? Every single day, what do we have to do to win or lose?
So do you mean from an individual stakeholder's perspective? So not just a stakeholder, but an individual contributor's perspective. So every person in the business understands a metric, a KPI, an OKR, whatever we call it in the business, that they can tie back to sort of the core KPI or the core. This is we're all rowing in the same direction thematically.
Yeah.
Is that what
and even if they don't know how to tie it back, does the group leader, does the team leader know how to tie it back, right? So in sales, right, you have to do so many outreach, you have to do so many touches, right? Like one of the things that I say that I stole from someone else. That's what I do. I steal things, and
so that's what everybody. That's what everybody does. Yeah. We don't have to. Let's not make apologies for that.
Yeah. More is not a goal.
Yeah.
Right, what do you want to do? More. Well, more is not a goal. West is not a destination. We head west. We could end up in Lubbock. We could end up in Albuquerque. We could end up all kinds of damn places. Specifically, where do you want to go? How do you want to get there? Right. So for a carrier rep, like cover freight. Well, how do you want them to cover freight? Do you want them to have a specific load to carrier ratio? Do you want them reaching out to all the new carriers in my carrier packets are RMIS and adding capacity? What else do you want them to do? What are the leading indicators that lead to success, right? So revenue just tells you what happened in the past.
Yeah, it's a trailing indicator.
It's trailing, right? Yeah. So every day we have to know, we take that trailing indicator and say we did or we didn't. What are the leading indicators, right? So the leaders have to know how that boils down. And it's really boring, Justin. You just say the same thing every single day.
Yeah.
But after a while, people start to win. Right?
Yeah. All
right. So the second thing is institutionalize the habits. Right. So what are the habits that lead people to success? And what are they in your business? What are they for your role? Right. So what's the habit of the CEO? What's the habit of his executive team? What do his managers have to do? Do all of those things tie together? Do we all believe the same thing? Or are we all doing different things? Right. And then are you really consistent with your people?
Sorry, just a pause, just stop for a sec if I could. What is the example of a habit? What does that look like?
So for some people, it's mantras like be early to be on time, the whole Vince Lombardi thing, right? But habits are every day. So what I tell salespeople is every day you prospect, even if it's one person. If you ever lose that habit.
Yeah.
I listened to Max Lucado speak one time. Very prolific author, however many irrefutable laws of leadership he's up to, whatever. And he's making this point. He said, every day I read, every day I write, every day I file. Every day I read, every day I write, every day I file. Every day I read, every day I write, every day I file. And he said that about 15 times, and finally we all kind of got the message. And so it's what are those things? In any business, there are certain things that are the same, right? So if you're running the AR department, you better invoice every day.
Yeah.
I've been in companies where they just didn't invoice for a week. That was a very bad deal, man.
Yeah, right? It sounds like a few companies I know, but yeah.
Right. There are these very basic things, but at a leadership level, it's hey, you got to be really consistent with your one-on-ones. Hey, are you really consistent with your messaging? What does consistency mean? All right. I talked to a company the other day, and they were literally bickering over response time. I asked them, well, did anybody pick customer response time? Is it 3 minutes and 30 seconds? Is it 6? What's the
that's key.
It sounds simple.
No, that's super key right there. I actually want to even talk to that for a second. That's actually a great example of I love that's kind of the West is not a direction type thing, right? To say we're challenged over this because that's a perception issue, and if not codified, then what is right and what is wrong? What are we actually arguing over? It was unacceptable to me. It was acceptable to you. It's completely subjective. So I think that's a great example. What does that actually look like, and what does success look like?
So somebody just make a decision, right? Just make a decision.
Yeah.
One mantra that I've used in every single business is a customer never asks for updates.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Well, it means if the customer has to ask you where the truck is, you failed.
Yeah.
We got Mac deployment, we got tracking, we got ELDs, like a customer never asks for updates. So it's meant to beg the question and say what then has to, that's a habit. Our customers don't ask for updates. We just, they know where their stuff is.
Yeah.
So that's an idea of habits. And then the other thing is the environment. The last thing is create the environment. So the leader's job is to create the environment for people to flourish. So at a certain point, a leader's job is no longer to do stuff, right? It is to create an environment where humans can flourish. And that's a little bit different in every business. Yeah. I've gone into brokerages that, like, I got a good friend that will put a football helmet on and bang his head into a gong if someone closes a big deal. I love this guy. I love this guy. It's a good friend.
Can I just, is it a headbutt or is it like a full off the ground, like human torpedo
puts a Minnesota Vikings helmet on.
Yeah.
He runs into a gong. I will never do that. But I love this guy. Yeah. So for him, that's their kind of environment, man. This kind of like jock jams, like yeah. And that's cool, man. And they're really consistent with that, and they take really good care of people.
Yeah, and those are habits. And those are habits too, right? I mean, these are habits that drive the environment. One sort of stacks on the other in this framework.
Absolutely. So it's probably like in the startup world, right? Like you buying IPAs and a ping pong table, doesn't mean you have a startup culture. Yeah. Like the presence of the IPA and the ping pong table doesn't actually mean anything.
That's right.
You actually have to do something to engage with your people. So those are two things: paint the picture, institutionalize the habits, create the environment. Still do it.
So I mean, I think that's really that's interesting because I think it's a again, it's like none of that is earth-shattering news in terms of what that is, but I think putting that into practice and boiling that down to sort of some simple fundamentals is really helpful. And I think I'd like to kind of just jump from there into, and again, this is like most of these shows, and if people are still listening, they'll know that they go kind of a little unstructured. And I think that what I'm actually interested in to talk about, because I'd like your opinion on, you mentioned freight tech, or sorry, I did anyway in your bio, and freight tech it's a funny term because it didn't really exist when we first started, right? We were just
correct.
We were just building a TMS. There wasn't like these nomenclatures for every single like vertical. But I guess SaaS has got big enough, and you have to kind of bucket them together. What's your general feel on sort of the freight tech vertical in terms of where it is, some of the companies you've met with, like? What are your thoughts around sort of just technology and freight in general, but more, again, leaning towards the more modern sort of API and cloud-based stuff that's maybe come around in the last 5-6 years and sooner?
Yeah, man. So I'm way over my skis, but I'll give you my opinion.
Sure, that's okay.
I've spent enough time in it to be dangerous, and I've been in companies that own custom technology. And I think what's interesting about freight tech is that they seem to talk about I don't know who they is, people, whatever, seem to talk about freight technology and modernizing it as if they're the only people that deal with that. Because medical records are real freaking modern. Come on, right? Yeah. Like banking, like everybody deals with old, nasty tech with old, nasty data models, right? There's a big publicly traded company right here in Chattanooga that runs on AS400. Yeah. And they're touting how advanced they are all the time. Like it happens, right? So you're not that cute, man. Everybody deals with this, right? I think one of the things that I'm going to turn around and ask you is, I think people need to be less concerned with finding the right application to solve all their problems. Go get Mercury Gator Turbo or Rose Rocket or TIE or whatever. Like that's going to fix everything. And really have a good product owner in your business. Mm-hmm. Like, and I get caught in this sometimes where like people want to, and I love to bag on TMSs too. Our friend Ryan is, friends don't like friends TMS. But like the TMS isn't meant to solve all of your problems. Like, don't be mad that it doesn't do your back end or it doesn't do this integration. Like, have a really good product-minded person that can pick products for the way you want to run your business. So it's not really an answer on freight tech as much as it is like, I don't think that there's going to be this one thing to solve problems. And I feel like operators are still looking for that. Yeah. Is that making any sense, Justin? Like
100%.
I don't hear a lot of talk about product ownership.
Yeah.
And if you look at companies that have really grown, like Nolan has had a product owner for a long time. Like Molo, before they ever went to Mastery, like Andrew had a chief product officer that dealt with an off-the-shelf product.
Yeah.
Like the most innovative companies that I've talked to have product people
Yeah.
that aren't thinking about the piece of freight tech that's going to fix it.
Yeah.
But I love your feedback. That's just kind of where my head is.
No, I think it's fair. I think it's a little different from industry. So if we kind of split it between, asset and non-asset, and I say this just more of as like an overarching theme on that. I think one of the challenges, if I look at maybe asset-based trucking, is technology, I think, still is largely looked at as a cost center. And I think that when you do that, you're apprehensive about making. So you think about the investment from a human capital perspective, just like in what even is a product manager would be probably a question you'd get from most of the customer segment, and then it would be, I think there's so much sort of emphasis on throughput in businesses like that, and that type of person can be difficult to quantify, manage, and what does a product owner need with it? Like if I think about what is a product owner going to do when they show up, they're going to want to hire 3 more people, and so it becomes it becomes a group. It becomes a group, and so now I've got this group that's doing this thing, and and I say this often, and I people don't necessarily like this, but I think you and I have probably very similar blunt sort of strategy or just way of existing. And often when I walk into a room with a trucking executive, it'll be like, I'm not here to reduce your technology spend. I'm here to increase it. Yeah. And you should be thinking about increasing it. Now, I think on the brokerage side is a little bit different. I think there's a bit more appetite for growth. And quite frankly, there's just more money. There's more margin. There's more room to play around. So I do see a little bit more thoughtfulness around that. But I do agree with you. I think it is a one shape fits all. But I also, it's a big conversation because I think there's also a challenge with, there's still a transition going on where people don't know how to buy technology. They don't know how to buy SaaS specifically. Right on. Yeah. Right? So like, how do I even do that? So the owner says, we've got $150,000 to spend on technology. Here you go. You're the youngest person in the business. Go find it.
Yeah. Like shit, you have the least amount of gray hair.
Exactly. That's right. Yeah. Like you're the fastest typer on your phone here. So, again, I'm being facetious to a degree, but probably only to a degree. And so I think that there is there's an education that has to happen. I know when Rose Rocket first came out, we were spending a ton of sort of marketing dollars and imprints on educating people on what SaaS was. Yeah. Education marketing is friggin' expensive and it's super risky. But the first many years of our business, we were spending time. This is why you want SaaS over on-prem. This is why it's actually more secure. This is like debunking all of the block and tackle defense that the big on-prem players were playing against the SaaS that was coming up. They've capitulated. They couldn't do anything about it. Now they're trying to become SaaS. That was going to happen. And we're going to get disrupted by something else. So we'll be on the other side of that fence sooner or later, playing defense against why SaaS is better than, oh God, who knows, AI.
Yeah, I will say it is interesting because when you talk about freight tech in the domestic space, you're almost always going to end up talking about TMS.
Yeah. Well, right? It's the hub. It's the hub of your system, right? Yeah. It's your system.
And then you almost... then you ended up in like feature comparison.
Yeah.
Right. And so I have a couple of companies that I'll do some like referral work for, and I have to tell people. So I'll say, what system are you on? And they'll say Aljex, or they'll say Mercury Gate, or they'll say TMW, or whatever. And I'll say, so when you log in, please don't call me and be mad at me when there's no load board. Right? You need to think about workflow optimization. You need to think about putting things in front of the user that you want the user to do and improving the user experience. So please don't be mad that you don't have a pick list that changes colors.
Yeah.
Like 1996 called, they want their shit back, right?
Yeah.
But that's inevitably where you get caught is, well, I just want to feature compare.
Well, because that goes back to you don't know how to buy it. So you don't, so what else?
Yeah.
What else? It's almost like when you think about freight shopping, the customer doesn't know how to buy freight, so all they do is look at rates. It's the same thing. They've been educated sort of by a market a certain way, and in the absence of knowing anything else, I will use something that is quantifiable that I can take to somebody senior to me and basically not get fired for make the wrong decision because at least I used a framework that was based, well, this one was cheaper.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up about the buying sophistication, right? So one of the things that happens in selling transportation services, especially like with 3PLs that are selling to like truckload shippers, I've taught salespeople for years, and I'll say things like, look, if you call a Fortune 500, 100, whatever, like companies will have entire purchasing groups, and there will be sophistication around how they buy toilet paper and pencils.
Yeah.
You will call the transportation department and somebody that is spending $30 million a year, and the guy, he doesn't really know how he got there.
Yeah.
He started in the shipping department, and they had him do some other stuff, and now he's got an Excel spreadsheet and an email distribution list, and he is dangerous. Yeah. So there is a lack of sophistication. And so that's kind of all over our business, right? Like the technology company I ran for a year, we sold to upstream oil and gas companies. Man, I mean, the people we sold to, they made their careers on $5 million waste of time ERP projects. That's all they did was they just sat around and spent money.
Yeah.
Right. You get into our business, it's what can it replace? How much money are you going to save me? Well, I don't want to have to pay to implement it. And it's like, have you ever actually bought technology before? Have you ever actually done this?
Yeah. That's it. It's interesting that there's a sort of parallel there. It reminded me of I remember years ago doing this sort of freight analysis for this company and going back and saying, I can see, and I remember the numbers. So I had a relationship with the owner, and in order to, I had a brokerage, so they would have to move all their business over to us, and we can save you $600,000, basically is what I went with him to say. And he said, that's great. A nice guy too. And this was actually a great lesson he taught me. He said, but as an owner of a company, I don't care about freight. He said, my job is to go out and find another $5 million in business right now, and disrupting my team for whatever saving that isn't worth it. And it really just was there was a longer kind of preamble to that, but the notion that ownership doesn't care about freight is in that type of, it was really, really important for me to think about and kind of sort of learn my place and learn freight's sort of place in the ecosystem. There's a lot of conversations where you say, you got to get to the top, you got to get to executives. It's and that's not true in all cases. And sometimes that's actually completely, a waste of your time to even get there because they don't give a shit. That's not what they want to be focusing on. They're focusing on growth or other things that are more strategic to the business, not, an area that's a cost center. So I think that was a lesson learned for me. But yeah, to your point, it's really interesting hearing you say that too, because it's an observation I've heard from categorically pretty much everybody, that it's the amount of money being handled out of the out of the folks in the back who, like you said, kind of accidentally got there. The only reason they're there is because the guy before them got run over by a forklift, and now he happens to be holding the keys to $30 million of spending. Exactly like you said, you can't get a $150 expense through on the front of the building, but you got this guy back here, running $30 million using spreadsheets.
Yeah, and he'll add you to the email list. And
exactly. Yeah, don't worry. You'll get BCC'd. Yeah, you'll get.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Never mind. Next.
Yeah.
But I think what I do want to say about because we're having a fun time, knocking on people we probably hope to sell to.
Exactly. Yeah.
I do want to say, right? Please call both of us and buy something from us. But I do want to say, it's not for lack of intelligence.
Yeah,
it's
100%.
just if you're not used to doing it.
Yeah.
Right. And so I've seen that with salespeople that I've had to train to sell freight technology.
Yeah.
A lot of the early companies, it's well, who do we talk to and how do they understand our value proposition?
Yeah.
Is it the operator? Is it the product folks? And I'll tell you, Justin, it's different in every company. So in one deal right now that I'm working on, these guys it's a really neat deal. They have found a way to do automated polygon-based geofencing at scale. So in most companies right now, you either use a bubble, which is very inaccurate, or you're manually drawing something. Right? Yeah. So what these guys can do is they can take your addresses and provide you back a automated way of string of lat longs and GPS coordinates, and it's polygon based, right? So it's really
very
accurate.
Cool. Yeah.
But companies don't know what to do with it. Well, is it the product guys? Is it where's the biggest impact?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times in freight technology, it's figuring out where to go. I was talking with a developer yesterday here in Chattanooga, and he was asking me about it. And my question to you is, do you think that one of the challenges is that the best technology folks in the world are people like Amazon or others that are just building it for themselves? The big ones can build it for themselves. And so there's not any commercially available, one product to rule them all?
Well, I think the industry in general is so fragmented that makes it's a difficult concept to really try to do, one product to win. And I think because there's sort of categories of product, so TMS, ELD, the various point solutions, like what you're talking about, sort of, even again, where does that fit, like that product, where does that live, and how does it get broadcasted, how does it get distributed? I wouldn't even necessarily know. So I think it's a bit of a product fragmentation challenge, and I think it's a just, if you're going to build vertical, you can't really build vertical SaaS for trucking. You would have to build vertical SaaS for truckload, vertical SaaS for LTL, vertical SaaS maybe for final mile, for intermodal. So I think that's where that becomes really challenging. So I think what you just simply need is more time.
Yeah, and the other thing I would encourage people to do is, please don't be mad when you have to buy again in 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, 100%.
Please don't think you're going to buy this one time and be done with it.
Yeah.
So, some of the other reasons that people call me is just to be able to make decisions faster.
Yeah.
One of the things in business is just how quickly can I make decisions and get things done.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time having these conversations. The little stint I did at FreightWaves, man, I met so many people in this business on the technology side. But sometimes what I'm able to help people do is just figure out how to put their technology stacked together. So in the same way we're talking about product, it's like, what do we need for that? Well, you need like 5 things. Let's talk about that, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing for back office? What are you doing for planning? Your TMS is you gotta prosecute a transaction somewhere, but a lot of this stuff can live in different places.
Yeah.
Right? You need a really good data model. You need this and that. And so, one of the things is just, I think it's fair to say that with the proliferation of startups, you can kind of get fatigued.
Yeah.
Like, which thing do I need for my procurement? Which thing do I need for my sales team? Like, well, how do I get all this to talk?
Yeah.
I went from just having a TMS and the DAP board, and now I got to have like 6 things.
Yeah.
What? How do I put it all together? Like, there's genuine like mental fatigue, and owners just go, never mind. Just I have a spreadsheet. I have my TMS. Hire 20 people, please.
Yeah, I think when you're approaching the buy, and this goes in categorically, like the famous, and it is my favorite, but it's almost like it's not weighted properly. So you think of like BANT, right? So anyone who doesn't know that, it's budget, authority, need, and timeline. And when I'm talking to anybody in sort of sales motion,
all the sales geeks just started debating the
exactly. Well, and I'll help with that debate, because I think largely budget can be somewhat dictated based on value. I think authority is whatever you'll get there. Time you can also dictate. The only one that matters there is the need. And I think that is really, really difficult. But I think as a buyer, you almost need to think through that same lens of, I think it's really challenging when you're speaking to somebody. It's like, why are you doing this today? And they say, well, I have to modernize. Yeah. What does that even mean? Like, do you? Why?
Yeah, why?
Why? What is the need?
Like our friend?
Yeah.
Why? Why?
That's it.
You're making money.
Exactly.
Your business.
Yeah.
Like why?
To what end, right? And so maybe there are reasons. It just requires you to be more pragmatic in the way you're thinking and approaching it. But I think as when thinking about buying technology or doing this to try to reduce the fatigue, it's like, what's the end in mind? What's the business objective we're trying to solve? And don't think that the tool itself is a panacea. Can we just find a tool that will enable said outcome? And I think that makes the decision so much easier, because it becomes really crystal clear on what you're after, because you're anchoring it against a true proper outcome and a business objective, versus we have to modernize, or because everyone else is doing it, or we're feeling pressure from some source that doesn't really make a difference. So I think there's lots of good reasons to buy technology, but I would say that. But they've got to be your own, and you've got to really lean into what the business objective is and anchor it around that purchase. But I think to your point, you're going to be changing it probably. And I think that's also a bygone concept of, you buy technology once because you used to. You buy it on-prem, you own the database, you get to do stuff to, and you probably kept it for 20 years, maybe more.
Mm-hmm.
But those days are gone.
Because you did stuff to it.
That's right, yeah.
So
man, yeah, now you're like opening up a whole new thread of conversation. And that's why you can't buy SaaS. And that's why you can't buy SaaS. Yeah. So if I could ask how, in like a really short kind of, we're gonna wrap it up here. So on the way out, if you could give a piece of advice for people on how to better develop themselves as a business leader, and maybe it's the framework we spoke of, but like what is that kernel that you want people to leave with here today, where they can think about taking their business to the next level, or assessing it, or just being a better leader?
Yeah, man. I got a couple things. So one, Patrick Lencioni talks about be humble, hungry, smart. I think humility is the most important thing, and I probably say that because it's the thing I probably struggle with the most. And just based on some of the things you said, you probably have had that in your life, right? Like, hey, I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But there's also this thing you got to find out how to be humble. And I recently had some coaching and heard humility talked about, and that it's being right sized. Right. It's not this, right. So to be humble and watch the ego, right. So not all ego is bad, but what leaders tend to do is either live in, I am the shit or I'm a piece of shit. Right. And so it's, hey man, like know how you're built and be cool with that. Like hire people that you're not good at. And so what I try to do is stay around people that are smarter than me, but they're humble about it. And this is the hard thing. Ask the questions you're really afraid to hear the answers to. So if you're a young leader and you're coming up and you're in a peer group or whatever, and you're all just sitting around talking about how hard your life is as a founder or how tough it is to be a business owner. Yeah, I know. I get it. But if you want to be a better leader, be afraid, be willing to to ask the questions you actually don't want the answer to.
How are you with that?
Oh, it's been quite the journey, man.
I'm not great. I'm not great at that. I'm
not either.
Yeah.
I'm not either because that vulnerability, like, look, man, I get paid to know things.
Yeah.
And so it took me a long time to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so now I've just become a big fan of going, I don't know. But we can figure it out together, because that's actually what I'm really good at. I'm actually not good at knowing things. I'm good at figuring it out. And so there's a lot of freedom in saying, I don't know. There's a lot of freedom in saying, I'm just not built that way, man. This is how I do it. But Justin, he does this. Let's call him. He'll do it. And it took a lot of time and a lot of mistakes to realize like what ego. Because when you operate in the unhealthy ego, you become a victim of everything.
Yeah.
You become a victim of everything, right? And so the last thing I would say is know your baggage. So know how you're built, and as a leader, know your baggage, right? So sometimes if you read leadership material and it's like somehow people cease to be human beings when they become leaders. We just talk about like these kind of ethereal principles, and like leaders they had childhoods. They got bullied in high school. They had a horrible boss when they were 20 years old. Like, we all got baggage. Know that you are relating to your employees out of your own crap.
Hey, projecting.
And that's cool.
Yeah.
Like, you just know it, right? And so sometimes we experience things with our people, with the teams that we're managing, that aren't really about them, and just know that. But don't think that like when you come to work and like you put your leader hat on, that like your humanity goes away. Like, so just be really human, like know how you're built, watch your ego, ask questions you're afraid to get the answers to, and do it with the right people. Like, you can only ask 2 or 3 people those questions. It's got to be a really small circle. And I think if you do that and you do that regularly, you're going to be a good leader.
I think that's great advice. I think that's a great way to go out. That was a super fun conversation. As I led off, I was really looking forward to this and just getting to know you. That did just what I had hoped. So thank you, Michael.
Yeah,
that was great. I feel like I will see you again. That's just the way these things work, and kind of two birds from a feather here, it feels like. Thanks again, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you for listening to Freight Famous, and be sure to like and subscribe